This is the American Game Dog Podcast, episode number 2. And today we're joined by a very wise man who is also a Hall of Fame bulldogger, Mr. Richard Schoolboy Garcia. It's a pleasure to have you joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate being on.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions. Okay, so the first question, when you got into the Bulldogs, hold on, let's see. How should I word it? Okay, when you got into the Bulldogs, and at that particular time period, what bloodline was at the top of his game?
Well, there were several that during that time period or that era. You could say Carver dogs, Jeep dogs, Red Boy dogs, Boleo dogs, several of what people follow today, boomerang dogs. Uh, Towards the end, later is when the and Jeep Red Boy dogs also, but towards the time period I got out, that's when the Mayday and Buck stuff started, and
Okay.
other one. But Bully Son dogs, I had at different periods of time during that early part. I had Bully Son dogs, Heinzel dogs, Boleo dogs, Boyles dogs, heavy on the Boleo side,
Oh
and
man.
eventually Jeep Red Boy dogs and Rascal dogs.
Okay. Uh, the second question: How did you receive? How did you receive the name Schoolboy? That's something that I ain't never really heard anybody ask, so I figured I'd ask it.
Yeah. I'm a boxing fan too. Most people know that follow me. And one of my favorite boxers was a guy named Bobby Chacon. He was a featherweight and a junior lightweight champion. I really liked him. I got introduced to him through a full contact fighter, martial arts fighter named Benny Urquidez. And that's how I really started following Bobby Chacon. Well, his nickname for boxing was Schoolboy because he
Okay.
was in college. He was in college when he turned professional, so he just took that term, and then he looked real young for his age. He looked like a schoolboy. So because of him, I just kind of stole his name.
I mean, it's known all over the world now. Though you done took
Yeah,
it to another
yeah,
level.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
He kind of. I just like he was a real exciting fighter, hard hitter, and I just like him. He was real scrappy.
Oh yeah,
Never quit.
I'm gonna have to check that out, man. You just put me on
Yeah,
something new.
yeah. Just look at him. He ain't
Yes,
like the
sir.
greatest fighter, but he never quit. Real scrappy, always in wars, and had good skill, just tough. Didn't look like much. If you look at him, he looked like a little kid in there.
Man.
And I was young when I started, so the name kind of fit.
Oh man. Okay. That's a dope backstory.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you could go back in time, is there anything that you would have done different far as the dogs?
I think I would have learned aftercare earlier. There
Yeah, that's
wasn't a lot
very
of
important.
outlets. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of outlets to learn that, and people didn't share that information because you couldn't, even though it wasn't a federal felony yet. Uh, you had to be real reluctant to take messed up dogs to vets and stuff like that. They had a standing order, just like they do with abused children. And I'm not making that distinction that they're the same thing, but or a
Yeah.
bullet wound, you know, stabbing or bullet wound. If you go to the hospital, you go to the doctor, they have to report. They have to
Yeah.
report it to the police. So the vets had to do the same thing. If they thought something was funny, they were obligated to report it. But I didn't
Man.
have the expertise till later. And even later on, once I got into it, most of the time I would hire people to go to my shows and do the aftercare because they were real skilled. They saved several of my dogs,
Man.
and it takes expertise to do that. I can do basic things. I can hit a vein. I can, and then getting a hold of the meds again, the meds were illegal to have. You couldn't just have them lying around. And I had a lot of shows at my house, so if something happened, that would have just been something else that they could have connected me with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't even have treadmills or none of that. No, no, none of that stuff hooked up. I used a bike and strength training to condition my dogs. So I didn't even have a treadmill there that could be used as paraphernalia.
Man, that's crazy. That's wild. And a
Yeah,
German Shepherd, can have a treadmill all day long.
all day long. Well, the cops use them too.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
it's a tool like anything else.
yeah,
It's just a
man.
tool, like a breaking stick. It's a tool, not necessarily meant for anything illegal. It's like a
Yeah,
gun. A gun is a tool. It's not necessarily meant to be used for illegal things. Sometimes they are,
yeah,
but people can have guns. Thank God.
yeah. Lord, thank God we in the
Yeah.
USA.
Yeah. So when people would come to my house, they'd be all around looking, whatever. And they say, "How do you work your dog?" I don't see no treadmill. I don't see no cat meal. I don't see no uh no spring pole, no swimming pool, no nothing. And I just point out because I live out in the country in the middle of acres and acres of almond trees. And I just point out to the trees. That's how I work my dog out there in that field.
Man, yeah, man. It seemed like them were great times.
Oh, we had a
Okay,
lot of
so
fun.
we're gonna time travel for a minute, going back to the time of Crenshaw's champion Jeep. I hear all the time that he came close to quitting a couple times.
Yeah.
Do you feel like if Angus had never got into that accident, would he have been successful against Jeep?
Hey, there's no telling unless you put them together.
Yeah,
Anything can
yeah,
happen. Even sometimes a sure thing. It's a sure thing. You can tell. You know, if you've
yeah,
seen both of them go before, you pretty much can tell. Okay, that one he can beat that one. But even in those cases, sometimes it don't happen that way for a number of reasons. That's why there's upsets, and that's why there's underdogs that win. So there's
yeah,
no way of telling. It would be people's opinion, but then too, you would have to put them together and see, right? So
yeah,
there's no way. As far as the quitting part, I've heard different stories back and forth, and the stories a lot of times they're embellished over time. Nobody really said any of that back in the day. So one of them was, against Cooper's weenie. And
yeah.
what happened, even if you read the report, because I wasn't there for any of them, but if you read the
Okay,
report, Weenie grabbed him by the tail and it confused him. And he didn't know what to do about it. He had him by his tail.
man.
But but seeing interviews and speaking with Vince Cooper, who owned Weenie, he said Jeep won. He beat him, and he had to pick up, and you know he was the better dog. So when your opponent says that, it means a lot.
Yeah,
Against Homer, if they said the same thing. He tried to jump out. Again, if you read the report, it says Crenshaw called Jeep into a turn. He called him over, and they called a turn. They handled him.
okay.
So I don't know. I don't know if he did or not, because sometimes dogs make signs, and you go, "Oh, he's going to quit," or "He's going to, he's a cur," or whatever.
Yeah,
And sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. I've had that happen to me. One of my earliest matches, the thing was pretty even. Mine started to win a little bit, and the female I was going against, she just let go, walked over to the side, put her hands up on the wall like she was going to jump out, but there were people sitting right, right by the box. So she didn't have room to jump out. Well, my bitch grabbed her, put her back in, and my bitch ended up quitting and she won. So I understand that, and she scratched after that, no hesitation. So they do all kinds of stuff. The main thing you got to remember is Jeep scratched last. And he never hesitated on his scratches. Nobody ever denies that. So when Homer couldn't go, Homer was dead game. When Homer couldn't go, Jeep scratched to win. Or at least he made the last scratch. So
yes, sir.
When stuff like that happens, when you see great dogs like that and people criticize them, especially, and it's generally people that were not involved, didn't do a whole lot. They're kind of on the sidelines, like a Sunday, what do they call them? Couch, whatever,
Yeah.
They're the first ones to criticize. So I always ask, have you ever had a dog like that? Have you ever had a 4-time winner that beat 3 champions and a 2-time winner, beat a champion in 28 minutes, beat Homer in almost 4 hours? Have you ever had a dog like that? Most of the time they're going to say no.
Yes, sir.
Because most people don't have dogs like that.
No, sir.
So I'm biased because I'm a Jeep guy, but his wins are not disputed. He won 4 times, and his production rate can't be disputed. Most of it is documented.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of dogs do weird stuff, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions on it.
Yes, sir. Okay, going back to Ozzie Stevens Homer, he was a great dog in his own right. And
Yep.
I've heard many people say a better conditioned Homer would have won against Jeep. I also heard if Homer would have had a better handler, he may have been victorious. What is your take when it comes to that debate?
Well, there's no doubt he was a great dog, dead game. One person who was there, he's an old dog, man. He told me in almost 4 hours, 3 hours and 45 minutes that the match went, Homer never took his eyes off Jeep. Never. And he tried to the end to scratch, rolling around, crying, trying to get over there, making every effort. And he died shortly after the match was over. He just couldn't make it. So he got counted out. There's no disputing he was a great dog. And his record, he was a 4-time winner too. The longest he went was an hour. He finished 3 of the 4 opponents that he went into. Only 1 survived. He was a bad dog.
Yeah, he was.
As far as the conditioning, it would be hard for me to think that a dog that was in poor shape could fight for 4 hours.
That's what a lot of people say.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And as far as the weight goes, there's 2 reports on the match. So I've never got a answer. The people that were involved are dead now.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be able to answer them. But in one report, it says the weight was 42 pounds. The other report says the weight was 43 pounds. So I don't know which one it was. As far as him being underweight, like people say, that could have been true.
Yeah.
But then if it was true, because you know all this beforehand, why would you go through with it?
Yeah. Handicap your dog.
Right. Yeah. Why would you do it? The other thing is, late in the match, Crenshaw offered a draw to Homer's side because Homer was borrowed, right? They borrowed him from Ozzie.
Yeah.
So they thought he was good enough not to pay a forfeit. And they thought he was going to win. Maybe it's those signs that Jeep made or whatever. They thought he was going to win. So they didn't accept the draw. And Homer ended up losing. As far as the handling, where that comes from, it was a guy named Kenny Sammons. He had been a dog man up until that time, through my research, about 5 years. And he handled several dogs. And this was a big show and a big crowd. Maybe it got to him a little bit, but he was holding Homer, according to what I heard. He was holding Homer and didn't set him down properly. on the release, and the ref said release your dog, or Crenshaw, whatever, right? Jeep
Yes,
ran
sir.
over and hit him while he wasn't paying attention. The
Dang.
handler wasn't paying attention, so he hit Homer in the shoulder, and within 10 or 20 minutes, he took that leg out. Jeep took that leg out. So for most of the match, Homer was on 3 legs because one of his legs was useless as far as being able to put pressure on it, stand on it, balance on it. So that was a
Dang.
disadvantage. And
Yeah.
that's why people say the handler made a mistake. If that's what happened, yeah, he did. You should be ready. You should be paying attention about
Yes,
whatever's
sir.
going on and
Especially in
focus.
a high level convention like that.
Yeah, yeah. But again, it happens. I've seen all kinds of stuff happen.
Yeah.
Dogs not coming out of the corner. One show I went to was between a dog named 357 Magnum and Shorty. Shorty was a white dog. 357 Magnum was a Bully Son Niggerino dog. Shorty was a 2-time winner. And they faced him up. The referee said, release your dogs. When they did that, Magnum turned around in his corner and put his feet up on the wall like he was going to jump out on the release. And Shorty ran over, hit him in the stifle, got him into the fight, and it went 2 hours and 40 minutes, and Magnum ended up winning. He was going to jump out, or he acted like it. At least he put his feet up,
Yeah.
like he was
Yeah.
going to leave. But he got him into the fight. He ended up winning after 2 hours and 40 minutes. So,
Man.
I've seen dogs released and they run over and bite the referee. I've seen dogs release and they jump out.
Dang.
I've seen this at a show too in Mexico years ago. They had the dogs and usually you use the same corners, right? So a big convention, several matches, you use the same corner.
Yes, sir.
So they faced up a dog to scratch. He ran over, ran past the dog, jumped out, and kept running. Took off.
Gone.
The next show, the next dog in that same corner, scratching started. He released the dog. The dog ran over, jumped out, and kept going. So
What the
my
what?
friend was up next. My friend was up next, right? And he goes, I ain't taking that corner. He switched the corners around. He went to
Yeah.
a different corner because like a jinx or something. I ain't gonna go through
Yeah.
that. So
That's crazy.
so I mean, dogs. I've seen dogs let go and run away when they're winning. Dogs just leave the opponent, lose interest. With Jeep, one of
Dang.
his things where they say he don't have finish because he didn't really try to finish Homer. He would grab him by the ear, drag him around, shake him up, but he never went into the finishing spots. And I've seen that in some Jeep dogs. So I was real conscious of it. Some of them don't have finish. And I've seen grand champions, other dogs, they don't have finish. They won't quit. They'll keep scratching, but they won't finish their opponent. And they win. And that was one of the marks against Jeep. So when I saw finish in my dogs, in my mind, it's coming from the Honey Bunch and Bo side, not from Jeep himself. If they don't show finish, it's coming from Jeep himself. So every
Dang.
bloodline has flaws. You gotta figure out a way to fix them or remove them as much as you can. Ain't no dog perfect.
Yes,
Or
sir.
even aces, they're top level dogs. They're freaks of nature. But if enough people watch them, they're going to find something wrong with them. Just something they don't like or something that, to
Yeah.
criticize. But again, how many great dogs has someone had that they can compare to?
Yeah. Yeah. You right about that.
If
You right about
you think
that.
about it. Yeah,
Yes,
think
sir.
about it.
Yes,
So
sir.
I've learned, because I've done the same thing. Everybody criticize. But I learned not to criticize dog man and dogs. It doesn't do any good. And, if you want facts, I'll give you facts, tell you what happened. And if a dog quits, he quits. But to run people down or run dogs down, there's so much involved that it's almost like you're a hater because if you've been in there and did it long enough and had enough wins and losses and went into top level competition, everything is going to happen to you. You're going to have dead game dogs. You're going to have super hard biters. You're going to have dogs that quit. You're going to have dogs that don't have finish. You're going to have dogs that jump out. You're going to have dogs that won't start. I've seen dogs not start, just like that Magnum dog, that were experienced champions, 2-time winners, 1-time winners. And sometimes the crowd freaks them out. Sometimes the bright light freaks them out. Sometimes they don't feel good. Whatever it is, they act weird. I've seen them schooled out dog, good to go. You'd say, man, this dog can win. And they don't won't even start. They get bitten. They start crying and rolling around and ball up. I don't
Man.
know what goes through their head, but it happens. And like I said,
Yeah.
if you've done it long enough, that happened to a friend of mine, the same friend that I just spoke of. There was another old timer there. He's passed away now, Mr. Fiddler. And that happened to him. His bitch wouldn't start. Never started. He lost. We go back to the hotel and he says, man, Mr. Fiddler, I don't know what happened. I don't know why she did that. She was schooled out, good female, all this. And he told him, son, if you do dogs long enough, everything will happen to you. So
Yes,
that's kind
sir.
of where I got that from.
Yes, sir. That's a good quote too.
One of the differences with me is I'll talk about all my wins, all the good stuff, but I'll talk about the bad stuff too. I'll talk about when I lost, dogs quit. Because I know it happens to everybody. So I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not embarrassed. If you
Yes,
take
sir.
whatever negative, whatever losses you have, turn it into a learning experience, learn from it, get something positive out of it, then you're on the road to success. It'll help you.
Yes, sir.
But a lot of people can't do that. They get dejected, they get depressed, they get out. They won't stick with it.
Yes, sir. Oh, when it comes to the breeding of Bo, the honey bunch, of course it produced, Hall of Fame Bulldogs and Jeep, Charlie, and Missy. There was always talk that Charlie was a better dog than Jeep. What's your thought
As
on that
far
debate?
Yeah, as far as a performer, because Charlie had finish and he was a harder biter, and he went into good competition. He beat 3 top dog guys. He pretty much retired Don Mayfield because he beat Mayfield Snow. That was either the last match Mayfield had or the second to the last
Man,
because he lost his last 2 matches. He lost to Charlie and then he lost to either Zebo's sister or Zebo's daughter, Ruby. I forget what it was. And and then he beat Drew Favre and he beat another champion dog. I forget. So he had a great record. So as far as a performer, athlete, all that, winner, he was the better dog. As far as production, Jeep by far. Jeep's at the top of anybody's list as far as production that's recorded. Somebody might come and say a different dog produced more champions, grand champions, winners, ROMs, and all that, but they don't have all the facts generally.
yes, sir.
Jeep. Most of his stuff was recorded. It's printed somewhere, either on the ROM list, POR list, and then his offspring and progeny after that were also performers and producers. So it's going to be hard to top him because records have to be kept. You have to have some kind of facts, some stats to back up your claim.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One other question that I wanted to ask you too is how did you acquire Schoolboy's Big Red?
Steve Dunleavy, who actually bred him, uh, had several dogs, and he had made some breedings. Jeep Red Boy, tight bred Jeep to some Bully Sun White Blood, and he had his dog. He worked during the day in construction. He was on the road pavement, and he had all his dogs at his dad's house. Well, his dad passed away unexpectedly, so he couldn't take care of the dogs. So he just put them in people's hands, other dog men and friends' hands. So I had a litter from Sissy, who was an inbred Jeep bred to Big Red's sire, Rowdy, and I had Big Red's sister. Those are the dogs I got. And then he gave Big Red to another dog man. And the guy had his brother and he had Big Red. So he liked the brother better. And since I had, the same stuff from Dunleavy, he just gave me Big Red when he was a few months old. So he was a gift. That's how I got him.
It's cool, man.
Yeah.
There's always a discussion on which bloodline is better between the Eli or the Red Boy Jocko blood. In your professional opinion, as someone who's had dealings with both lines, which gives you the better dog?
Well, there's no way to tell. It's individual. The difference would be is Eli stuff has been around longer and it's consistent. And Red Boy Jocko, it is a bloodline, but it's an outcross. It's two bloodlines.
Yes,
where
sir.
Eli has been bred all kinds of different ways. But if you're concentrating on the Eli himself, that's one bloodline. So I can't say one is better than the other, or which gives you better dogs, because both of them have proven, even Red Boy itself has been proven to work. Jocko by itself has been proven to work. Eli by itself has been proven to work. And when you name bloodlines after dogs, and it's mostly done with males, like Red Boy, like Jocko, like Eli, like Bolio, like Bully Son, like Boomerang, like Art, like Zebo, it's because the dogs have proven to produce. So they have whole bloodlines named after them. Whereas the other way we name bloodlines is after the breeder itself.
Yes, sir.
And that could be several different bloodlines put together, but that's his family of dogs. He breeds them a particular way. He chooses the ones he likes. So basically, it's just what you like and what has it done for you? What has it produced for you?
Yes, sir.
Makes for good competition, makes for good discussion, good debate, right?
Yes, sir. Okay. As a confirmation judge, what is it that you look for in a dog who's worthy of a first place ribbon?
Yeah, I judge different from some other judges. I base my judging on symmetry and proportion, meaning the dog has to be evenly built. Because in my mind, since there's so many different bloodlines, so many different uh, builds, structures in the dogs, they all have their place. I don't judge dogs where they all have to look the same.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's what's happened with other breeds of dogs. That's why when you get away from the function of the breed, it becomes not that breed anymore. So because the past of the breed, just like in boxing, I always relate boxing to dogs in a lot of cases. In
Yes,
boxing,
sir.
you have all different weight classes, 105 pounds all the way up to over 200 pounds. You have people from all over the world, so they're built different, different weights, have different styles, lot of different things. So I look at the dogs in conformation the same way.
Yes,
So you
sir.
could be short, you could be tall, you could be long, you could be compact, thick, thin, whatever. I look at how they're built. If they're proportionally built, if you're short and thick and you have a pinhead, you're probably not going to win. The head has to match the rest of the body, right?
Yes, sir.
Or if you're if you got a pinhead and you're tall, but you're too thick, you're probably not going to win. So it kind of has to be proportion and symmetry, kind of evenly built. That's how I do it. And in doing that, I've given dogs built all different kinds of ways, trophies and ribbons.
Yes, sir. And it's definitely, I
Because
feel
like I said, what has happened with it is when you start breeding dogs to all look the same, now you're not breeding them for function, you're breeding them for looks.
yes, sir.
How they look and how they're built. That should never be the first thing. That's part of it. Some people like dogs built a certain way. They have a whole family of dogs built that way. Nothing wrong with that. But when you take the function out of it and they all have to look this way and they all have to be built this way and have this stifles like this and a chest like this and a head like this, then you get away from the function and it's more for looks. And that's destroyed tons and tons of breeds. You see people criticize them all the time. They have all these different breeds of dogs. They don't do nothing. They're just bred for how they look. They all look the same, but
most
they don't do nothing with them. So, so they have no function. Really, they're just a pet.
Yeah, most of them can't jump on the back of a truck.
Yeah, exactly. They can't run.
It's crazy.
More than 100 yards, whatever it is. They have no. It takes away their intelligence, takes away their instincts. Because if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
So once you take that away, all you have is a pet and not a very good one. And you develop health problems and you develop mental problems and you develop structure problems. And because to do that, generally you have to heavily inbreed at some point, and inbreeding can mess your dogs up if you're not careful.
Yes, sir.
Every domestic animal, doesn't matter if it's a cow, a dog, a horse, pig, whatever, was developed for a purpose. Whether it's sporting, whether it's work, whether it's food, they've been bred a certain way, following certain traits, so that the end result is something that they can manage domestically. For example, cattle, wild cattle, whether it's buffalo or bison or different cattle, if they were wild, you wouldn't be able to manage them. You can't handle them.
Yes,
you can't
sir.
load them on a truck, right, to take them to market. They fight you, they gore you, they do all kinds of stuff. So you have to dumb them down and make them more domesticated.
Man.
And you take horses out of the wild, you have to break them because they don't want people sitting on their back. So you have to domesticate them, or else they'll kick you, stomp you, bite on you, right?
Yes,
same
sir.
thing with hog. So same thing with every breed of dog. It was done for something, developed for a reason.
Yes, sir. Everybody has a way of breeding, whether it's the complete outcross, inbreeding, or line breeding. Which method did you utilize the most with your dogs back in the day?
Line breeding. That's my favorite way because it's family breeding. The dogs are related to some extent, either closer or more distant, because you have outcrosses in there too.
Yes, sir.
And it allows you to breed for a longer period of time without losing a lot of traits. And you can do inbreedings within your line breedings. You can line breed and then inbreed. You can line breed and then outcross. And so I've figured out, and most people do, not all, but most people do figure out that that's the best method to line breed, because you're capturing the traits, but they're not so tight where it messes up their structure or their mental focus or intelligence. They're not so outcrossed where the gene pool is so wide where you don't know where you're pulling the traits from. But like I said, they all have their place, but I've noticed that line breeding is the best way to do it.
Yes, sir.
Now, in horse racing, they just outcross all the time. They don't really tight breed. I haven't noticed any. If you look at any famous dog, look up their horse, racehorse, look up their pedigree, whether it's Secretariat or Seattle Slew or Citation, any of them, you won't see the same name for generations, the same horse in there. You won't see like the sire is the great grandfather or the uncle or anything like that. They're all different horses. So they have their way of breeding, but it's not tight at all, not even close. They're always bringing in fresh blood.
Yes, sir. What knowledge do you have on Creed's Red Devil and Wise Maximilian? Both are great dogs, and they both also produce some very good dogs. Though the blood still exists in different corners of the earth, why wasn't their bloodlines able to be as attainable as, let's say, Red Boy or Eli or Jeep dogs?
Right. Well, one of the reasons is, that's old stuff. And almost every dog, famous or not, if you go back far enough, you're going to find old family red nose. Some of the breeders really didn't let their blood out, like Bob Wallace. He had a lot of the old family, and he didn't have a lot of dogs, but he didn't sell dogs. Sometimes the breeder dies and they order their dogs destroyed. Sometimes the breeder dies or gets out of it and the blood just gets lost. But
Yes,
when you
sir.
have old bloodlines like that, they don't last forever. They change names, they outcross, they do this and that. So it's not, it doesn't just happen with that, because they were great dogs and they did produce. But at some point, that old blood is kind of gone. Same like with Heinzel dogs, or like when Bert Sorrells died. There's still Sorrells dogs around. You can get them from Tatanka Kennels and all that, but they're not from Bert, and they're not his selection. And someone could take that blood and make it better. Any blood, make it better. But like I said, over time, it's just generally lost. There's still Heinzel dogs out there, but it's not the same when Heinzel had them. He was a
Yes, sir.
supreme breeder. Everything he had was in the pit of health. Big bone, big teeth, strong, good looking dog. And then sometimes what breeders do, they don't want to breed outside their yard. They want to keep their stuff pure. So all they do is inbreed, inbreed, and then it's lost that way. They're not worth anything because there's too much heavy inbreeding. They start developing problems, physical and mental problems. I've seen inbred dogs, they only have one kidney. They have degenerative heart failure. They go blind. They're not able, they're barren. The females are barren or the males are sterile. Not to mention mental problems where they become aggressive or they're too timid, too shy, all that. So breeding is a skill. It's an art. There's certain ways to do it. And you have to have some standards. You have to have some methods. You have to know where you came from, what you're doing in the present, and where you're going to go in the future. And you have to be ready to change up if something doesn't work.
Yes, sir.
So that's the next book I'm doing, is a book on breeding, how to breed the American Pit Bull Terrier, and it has all my techniques and methods, different methods, so people can have an understanding at least of how I did it, and they can borrow from it or use it or whatever. If they don't like it, don't use it. But any breeder should have that. This is how I breed, and this is what I do, and this is why. And you have to have a
Yes,
culling
sir.
process and a selection process. You have to follow the traits and use the right individuals and prove them, make the breedings and follow whichever ones work. And even in that, you could have a breeding that produce one great animal out of the litter. Could be a 80-time winner. But if his litter mates ain't no good, I would not follow that dog. The percentages ain't there. The productivity isn't there. Doesn't mean I wouldn't keep them. I wouldn't use them. And I did that with several dogs. I used them for competition. They were good enough to win, but they weren't good enough to breed. They didn't have
Yes,
enough
sir.
of my standards where I would continue forward with them.
Yes, sir. Okay. When it comes to the red boy dog, it's always the great debate over the authenticity of his pedigree. Some believe he was an old family red nosed dog. Some believe his sire is Till's Tip. What is your belief on the way Red Boy was bred?
I don't have one. There's so many stories. Those two, a lot of different other ones. He was the only dog in his litter. Nope. He had a bunch of litter mates. He was off of Teal's Tip. He was a Colby dog. He wasn't a Colby dog. He was OFRN. He was found on the street. So I don't know. The
Yes,
only
sir.
one that would know is for sure is Howard Teal and Bass. And there's
Yes.
different stories about that, you know. So
Yeah, I think it's
uh,
going to be a mystery forever.
yeah,
Yep, lost in
you know, the
obscurity.
point, the thing to remember is he was a great dog. He was a great producer. However, he's bred, he was able to throw good dogs and continue, and a whole bloodline is named after him. So I used to be like that, you know. I wanted to know the truth of this, and I got away from that because it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter in the sense that if a dog can produce, if he has the traits you like, doesn't matter how he's bred. If you know how to breed, you can get good dogs from it. So in my
Yes,
mind, I'm
sir.
thinking, let's say I had a bunch of dogs and I don't know what, none of them have a pedigree. They're all unknown. Could I still breed good dogs? Yeah, why not? Because I have standards for breeding. I'm going to follow the traits. I'm going to use the dogs I like. At some point in my breeding program, they're going to become related to their offspring and progeny. I just make my own pets, and I never faked no pets. I never the dogs that deserved the credit got it, and the dogs that didn't get it. And that's just the way I was. And part of that is because people fake so much. I didn't want to be in that crowd. I didn't want to be looked at that way. So
Yes,
if they were
sir.
good, good. If they weren't, hey, it happens to everybody. So
Yes, sir.
I just, you know, that's people do whatever they want. If you like somebody's dogs, go get them. When I like somebody's dog, I really didn't care how it was bred. I kind of knew because I knew the people I was dealing with, and they would give me a pedigree, and that's the one I used. But that wasn't the first thing out of my head. How is he bred? Nobody ever shared pedigrees back then. They didn't tell you nothing. So when I saw a dog and he looked good, I wanted to breed to him. He was outside of my yard. I breed to him.
Sir. Yes, sir. All right. Looking at some of the dogs that you owned in the past, I always been very impressed. But when it comes to Schoolboy's Buzzy, whose sire was Broke's Ninja and whose dam was Miss Rowdy, her brother was a two-time winner named Broke's Rowdy. She gave birth to a couple of champions when bred, the Rancherita's little gator. Seems to me
Right.
she was a good producer. What stopped her
Yeah.
from achieving ROM or POR?
I don't think she was bred that much. That was to them, that was an outcross kind of.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know how many times she was bred. She produced Champion Cyclone, and Burrito was a two-time winner, and he lost one, and their own dog named Ninja, Little Bugsy. But one of the best dogs I seen came down from that breeding, a dog named Champion Chamuco, as good as anything you'd want. So
Man.
he was sired by Bean, uh, which was a heavy red boy dog. Out of that stuff, Gator, Bugsy
Man.
blood. I seen him win his third and his fourth. He was a killer and he was game too. So that's about all you need.
Yes, sir.
Top dog. So I
Yes,
just sold
sir.
her as a brood bitch. She was heavily undershot, and I hadn't even touched her. They looked at her later because I didn't find out till years later when I went to Mexico, and Jerry Wiseman's daughter was there, and I asked her about him, about her because that was when Chamuco was going to be shown that day. I said, how'd she turn out? Richard, she was game. We looked at her. She produced this, that, and she showed me the pedigree of Chamuco. That's the first time I seen it. She happened to have it on her. Maybe she knew I was going to be there and she wanted to show me, but she just pulled it out, showed it to me. Nice. We talked. I had known her when she was a little girl. Now she's grown up. But
man, she definitely that dog was a damn good producer, man. I'm surprised they didn't breed her more,
yeah,
but
yeah. Well, in real time too, you don't know. So if you look at it this way, you make a breeding, especially with females, they don't compared to a male, they don't throw near the numbers. So you make a breeding, you got to wait a couple of years to find out if it works. Sometimes it works and you can continue. But sometimes, what if the female dies between them, or she goes barren, or something happens, an accident, whatever it is, and you can only breed them so often.
yeah,
And you may make one or two breedings, or three, even three, before they get old. Before you find out if any of them are any good, then you got to go through them. But you're not going to
yeah,
breed a female a bunch of times without knowing something.
yeah,
Most of
yes,
mine, I
sir.
didn't. All my dogs, I didn't breed them that much. Some of them, I only bred them once, two, three times maybe. The most I bred a dog was Big Red. I bred him 5 times because I only bred for myself mostly, and I kept most of the dogs. And I only bred when I needed more dogs.
Yes, sir. I mean, that's the best way to do it. A lot of these people just breed like hell to make money.
Yeah,
Selling pups, peddling pups,
yeah,
man. That's the wrong way to
yeah,
go about things.
yeah. It is. There's very few people that make money with the dogs
Yeah.
because you do have to sell them. And if you
Yes,
have
sir.
to sell them, it's hard for a person to be 100% honest, or
Yeah.
else they won't sell the dog. And let's say it's a cull. You're not going to tell somebody this is a cull. I don't want him. That's why I'm selling him.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. Ain't I don't feel like nobody would would
Well,
tell
I
that
I
on
never
purpose.
I never lied. I told all the truth. Even dogs that I didn't want to keep, like I got rid of some dogs that were bred a certain way. They didn't
Yeah.
work for me. So I got rid of them, but I didn't lie about them. One of
Yes,
them,
sir.
one of them, one of them beat a 2-time winner. He said, "Why are you getting rid of her?" I said, "I don't like her." He said, "Well, what's wrong with her?" I said, "This line right here, this particular, they're just not durable enough. They're too thin bone. They don't take punishment well, but they're fast and they bite hard. So you can win with them." Uh, my friend, I sold him a grown female ready to go, 2 years old for $600. He beat a 2-time winner with her in 37 minutes.
Man.
And but he said, "Richard, I see what you're talking about now." She popped a tooth, cracked her front leg a little bit. They just weren't tough enough. But she
Yeah.
won. And same thing with another male. He beat a killer, giving up weight, and stopped him in 53 minutes. That dog had beaten a 2-time winner in 12 minutes, and I saw him do it. So the guy I had given the pups because I didn't want them given to another dog, man. He brought one of them back to me. I conditioned and handled them.
Yes, sir. Man. Well, I'm gonna ask this last question, and I guess we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But this is the question that I feel like a lot of people would, like the hear the answer to. Well, especially in my particular, state where I stay at in North Carolina.
Right.
Uh, Coming from the sand hills of North Carolina, which is also where the Laposes were from, Frank Jacobs, Ray Carter, Lockjaw Kennels, Tom Ratliff, just to name a few. What do you feel like were the Laposes' best contributions to the American Pit Bull Terrier? Because some of the
Yeah,
best
that
dogs have their lines in their pedigree.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Carolinas hotbed in my day. They've always had great dog, man, great dogs. Some bloodlines come from out there. The Lapase, like you're saying, Lapase, Red
Yes,
Boy
sir.
stuff. They use a lot of different. I would say their best contribution is the Bullet and the Buster blood. And they mix the two. Cotton's Bullet goes back to basically Leitner Colby dogs with a little bit of Dibo in there, or at least a little bit of, I have to look at the pedigree, a little bit of Dibo sire in there.
Yes,
Because
sir.
they're which is Trahan's Rascal. So Trahan's Rascal and Dibo are related. They're like half brothers, different mamas, but same sire.
Okay.
And then you add the Colby Leitner to it, which is a common combination. That's what the Pases did. So you have that Bullet side, which are tough, durable game dogs. And then they incorporated the Lapase's Buster, which is the Bully Son Arch Missy stuff. So again, you have tough, durable dogs that can bite hard. Put them together, that's where you get, Bullet 2, and you get a lot of different dogs. And a lot of different people, not just in that area, but in different areas. Some of them dogs made their way out here too, all the way out to the West Coast. So I would say that's their main contribution is the Cotton's Bullet stuff with the Lapase Buster stuff.
Okay.
And
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Lapase, she's the one who actually made most of the breedings because her husband died. In fact,
Okay.
John Shavar is the one who got Buster from Carver. So soon after he got Buster, he died. Mr. Lapase ended up with Buster. Shortly after he got Buster, he died.
Man,
So his wife is really the one who continued with the bloodline. She doesn't
I
get a
want
lot of credit, but
that's
she deserves it.
that's crazy that both of them had the dog for around the same amount of time and
Yeah,
passed away like that.
passed away like that. Yeah, it's sad, but it happens.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, she had the foresight to keep it going.
Yeah, that she
And
did.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people use that stuff. And they're back in the day, at least, even before my time, there's a debate who was better producer, Dibo and Trahan's Rascal and Cotton's Bullet. They were all kind of up on that pedestal.
Yeah.
Dibo, of course, got more recognition, but there's no taking away from those other two dogs, Rascal and Cotton Bullet. They were great producers.
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Garcia, I don't want to hold you too long. I understand you're a busy man. I'd like to
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time out today to give us this interview. Uh, is there anything you want to leave for the viewers before we close out?
Well, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it. And just if you really love the breed, you'll stick with it. If you don't, you won't. Try and have the best possible dogs you can. Health, maintenance, uh, good immune system, structure, all that stuff that's involved with it. Learn as much as you can about the history, about your particular dog, and retain that information. Use it to your benefit, and just keep bulldogging. Anybody can do this. Anybody can be successful in however you do it, even today's time where you have legal sports and hunting, all kinds of stuff. Just try and stay true to the breed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we sure appreciate this treat you gave us today, Mr. Garcia.
You're welcome. I'll be happy to do it again anytime. Just hit me up. We'll set something up, come up with some different topics and stuff. Yeah, I'm
Yes,
always
sir.
willing to help.
Yes, sir. I sure appreciate you. And this is the American Gamedog podcast, episode number 2. with Hall of Fame Bulldogger Mr. Richard Schoolboy Garcia. And we're signing out. Like, share, and
Peace.
subscribe, and comment. Thank you, Mr.
There
Garcia.
you go. You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.